Right. What of on the continent? Because man, somebody in the audience right now, the viewing audience right now, is saying, yeah, all right, Shakara. All these Africans, yeah, from the Caribbean and the Americas and blah blah, first Africa. What were the Africans on the continent saying about all of this? James Africanus Horton, author of the African's view of the Negro's place in nature, author of A Vindication of the African Race. Note the dates: 1865, 1868. Yeah, James Africanus Horton is born in what is now known as Nigeria. He spent some time living in another nation, I believe it's Sierra Leone, yeah, in West Africa. And he was not born with the name Africanus. He actually adopts the name Africanus. So if you Google him, you will probably just see Africanus Horton, yeah. But he is credited with being the father of Pan-African thought, yeah, intellectual thought in West Africa. Okay, because he was writing these documents during this time. So he condemns racism. He condemns racism much. So he even writes about, in A Vindication of the African Race, he writes about racism in the Americas. He's advocating for independence and self-government and African nationhood, yeah, on the African continent. And in fact, I believe he's one of the earliest to have considered affirming the concept of African nationality. Yeah, that is a term that he used. Okay, just presenting some other names who were present at this time. Most of these are in West Africa. J.E. Casey Hayford, Adelaide Casey Hayford, Ghana and Sierra Leone respectively. Yeah. But they are forerunners, 1800 philosophers in Pan-Africanism. John Mensah Saba, Mojola Agbebi, don't worry, I'm going to come back to him, and Deuce Muhammad Ali. Deuce Muhammad Ali is from Sudan and Egypt, okay? Not going to go into all these names because we're just throwing it out there because I do want to open up the conversation shortly. Ethiopianism is another concept that through which people were affirming an African identity. Now, this is predominantly East and Southeast Africa, yeah? In Lesotho, in 1872, 150 Africans renounced French missionaries, yeah? Missionaries, sorry, giving birth to the Ethiopian African church movement, yeah, in Southern Africa. Reverend Mangena Maka Mokone broke away from the Methodist Church and formed the Ethiopian Church of South Africa in 1892. Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, yeah, who's one of the leading members of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, visits South Africa in 1898. The point that's being made here is that, okay, so first of all, Psalm 60, I believe it is, Ethiopia shall stretch forth her hands unto God, and princes shall come out of Egypt, yeah, becomes a psalm of inspiration for an entire movement, yeah, to revolve around the concept of Ethiopianism. Ethiopia coming to be known as a name, a synonym for the continent of Africa. Understanding that the nation we now call Ethiopia is then known as Abyssinia. Okay, so Ethiopianism is an African liberation movement. All right, being pushed through the church. Okay. And this quote from a book by the name of Pan-Africanism, A History by Professor Hakeem Addy says, Ethiopianism in South Africa, as well as elsewhere, was also clearly a manifestation of wider social and political unrest and was associated with the slogan, Africa for the Africans. I forgot to mention earlier that Martin Delaney is the individual credited with coining the phrase, Africa for the Africans. It was also used by Edward Wilmot Blyden and was popularized by the prophet Marcus Messiah Garvey, with the addition those at home and those abroad. But the phrase, even before Garvey now, the phrase Africa for the Africans is associated with the Ethiopian church movement in Southern Africa. Ethiopianism in South Africa was strengthened by the outbreak of the Second Boer War, and subsequently considered a contributory factor to the 1906 Zulu Bambata rebellion in Natal. This rebellion also led to one of the earliest Pan-Africanist texts, hear it now, A Defense of the Ethiopian Movement, written by Bandele Omoni, 1884 to 1913, a young Nigerian student based in Britain who ended his short life engaged in politics in Brazil. Nigerian student writing A Defense of the Ethiopian Church Movement in Southern Africa, and ends his life politically engaged in Brazil, which is the most populous nation in the Western Hemisphere as far as African people is concerned. Okay, all right. Mojola Agbebi. Forgive my spelling mistake there. Jeez. All right. Founded the Native Baptist Church in 1888 and the African Baptist Union of West Africa. Born David Brown Vincent, he reclaimed his African name. So he threw away a European name. He was born with the name David Brown Vincent. And this African, who was born in what would later become known as Nigeria, dash with a European name. Dash it where? Fling it where? And reclaimed the name Mojola Agbebi. Yes? Agbebi promoted the development of a church governed by Africans. This is his own words now. Worked by Africans, supported by Africans, minus the tremors, complexion, and domination of a foreign and alien race. He's a churchman. Last year, the first. Inaugural, this is a speech that he delivered at the inaugural event of the United Native African Church in May 1882. Y'all ain't hear what I'm saying. You never heard what I just said. But Brother Mojola was also famous for making statements like the European church is dangerous, as far as Africans are concerned. We're nearly there, Kings of Queen, we're nearly there. So I've skipped a whole lot. I've just jumped through a whole heap of history to get to Marcus Mosiah Garvey, just noting the name, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League of the world. The term African is used again. We're gonna jump again. We're gonna make another jump, and just deal with how Africanness is affirmed in the independence era. Our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. That's the Sajja for Kwame Nkrumah. There is a new African in the world. This is a speech that he made during the inauguration of the independence of Ghana. Patrice Lumumba said similar words. We are going to show the world that the black man, what the black man can do when he works in freedom, and we are going to make of the Congo the center of the sun's radius for all of Africa. So all these people are coming with not just a regional kind of nation state consciousness. They're coming with a Pan-African, all African consciousness. Finally, we're going to end with the great Omowale Malcolm X and the program of the Organization of Afro-American Unity.